All right, everyone, Elizabethwarren has decided to go full wage gap. Now, first and foremost, there is no wage gap. The gap between males and females with regards to income is a collective number that has nothing to do with any individual on-the-ground discrimination. I will explain that. She's setting the stage for a monumental failure. If she becomes the nominee, Democrats, please listen. Can you please try to use common sense instead of just being morally self-righteous all of the fucking time? Because all I see from the liberals so-called, because they've abandoned actual liberalism, not using common sense, reason, and the Constitution anymore. They don't care about privacy. They don't care about free speech. Self-proclaimed liberals have gone nuts. They've gone completely fucking nuts, and they think the average American is going to look at this and actually vote for someone like Warren. I tell you, you will lose more handily among certain female voting blocks than you did with Hillary Clinton if Elizabethwarren is your nominee. Because if this is going to be her way forward, she'll lose. Here's the problem. Elizabethwarren comes out and says, well, if I'm elected, I'm going to use an executive order to look at the wage gap and address it. Can I just school you a little bit on what an executive order can and cannot do? Obama tried to use an executive order to legalize 4 million people, and the courts slapped him in the cock and told him he couldn't do that. The only thing that Warren could possibly accomplish through executive action on the wage gap issue is to commission a study of the wage gap and to commission an advisory panel on what should be done about it. The problem is that if you were to study it, $10 million later, which is what it costs in D.C. to study anything, to study a better Velcro, to study why my houseplants died, to study, a better method for drying bamboo for wall scrolls. All of these things that cost a lot of money. I can tell you exactly what that study would tell her. And this is a cautionary lesson. I'll explain how this overlaps with some other broken campaign promises through time. They will tell her there is no wage gap. If you were to try to address this through any action, you'd actually be discriminating against males because you'd effectively be paying females more for the same work. That's what would happen. You know what Elizabethwarren will do? This is a prediction if she became president. She'll never talk about it again. It'll be like Obama with Gitmo. It'll be just like Obama with Gitmo or any of a number of politicians. They make a campaign promise that they can't follow through with, and so they commission a study. They're told, no, you can't do this. It's impossible. And so they shut up about it because they know they don't want to talk about it because then people will be reminded that they broke their promise. It's sort of like when the liberals here promised people universal health care. They commissioned a study. Shumlin, of all people, far left Democratic governor, acolyte of Sanders and all of that stuff, he said, we can't do it. $1 million later and a year later after studying it with Gruber, nonetheless, the architect of Obamacare, we can't do it. We'd have to double the tax rate. Everyone would leave the state. Even the rich wouldn't be able to afford it. And the progressives whined and howled and said, well, you told us you'd have universal health care. He says, we can't do it. Now, a little bit of fucking common sense would have told them without the study that they couldn't do it. Elizabethwarren can't tackle this issue, which is a non-issue anyway, through this action. You can't force employers to literally pay females more to make the collective aggregate between males and females the same wage. The reason why there's a wage gap is quite simple. And this has been pointed out a million fucking goddamn times. Women are more likely to not be working by choice, by the way, not unemployment. Oh, women can't find it. No. Nothing to do with that. Women are more likely to choose because of two things. They have kids, they decide to be the stay-at-home parent. Now, this is not always the case. Sometimes the dad stays home, sometimes nobody stays home. Hell, sometimes they live off investments, probably they both stay home and just live the cool why not lifestyle only with a kid. But by and large, most of the time, if there is a stay-at-home parent, it is the female staying home. Most of the time. This is just a behavioral sort of biological thing. They're more likely to want to stay home. That's just the way that it is. Number two, they're more likely to seek like a part-time job or a lower-level job within a field, like for instance within teaching. There is a statistical anomaly wherein females are more likely to choose to be a kindergarten teacher than a high school teacher. The reason, and they make less at that point. It requires a bit less training and time. The reason is probably something like this. Well, I'm a 30-year-old female. Maybe I want to have a kid or something. I don't want to be in a high school position that I'll have to take time off from. But if I'm a kindergarten teacher, grading homework. What's grading homework? I put some random mark on the kid's crayon scribbling. No problem, it takes me 10 minutes. If I'm in high school, it takes me 2 hours. There's a big difference between the amount of time and the amount of training and the amount of effort and the amount of overtime, essentially, that teachers don't get paid for, really, grading things and stuff. And so they're more likely to choose that position. By the way, is Elizabethwarren going to complain that like 99% of oil rig workers and coal miners are male? Or road crews that do construction and stuff like that? By the way, those are good paying jobs. You know, sort of a micro dirty jobs thing. You realize how much money you make on an oil rig? You realize how much you're making more than that newcomer professor in their ivory castle. There are too few women coal miners, says Elizabethwarren in Bizarro World. No, that's basically why. Women are more likely to choose to stay home. They're also more likely to choose to be homemakers. That is, you've got a couple, whether they have kids or not. She's like, well, I don't want to work. I want to stay home. I'll do the cleaning and, you know, putter around and read and do my own thing. More likely to. By the way, what's the problem with that? There's no fucking problem. Who fucking cares? It's all voluntary. People choose. They make these choices in their life. The dude's like, yeah, go ahead and stay home. You don't need a job. I've got enough money coming in on my own. That's perfectly, what the fuck is anyone's judgment about that? It's their fucking life. Who cares? What if the dude decides to stay home? Sir, the neighbors might chuckle about how he's a kept man or something like that, but hey, he's doing what he wants to do. It's just females are more likely to fill that role. That's where your wage gap comes from. You can't address that by forcing businesses to literally pay women more to make up the difference. Like, oh, women make 74 cents or something like 72 cents on the dollar for every dollar that a man makes. No, they don't. The woman makes $1 for every dollar a man makes if she is employed in the same exact position. If you fix for that, if you look at just female physicians versus male physicians, female high school teachers, male high school teachers, female oil rig workers, male oil rig workers, they make the same fucking amount. It's exactly the same. There's no gap at all. It is completely eliminated. If two people work the same job, they make the same amount of money. If they have the same experience and qualifications, of course, that has something to do with it. Which generally, for the most part, they're going to be very similar, whether they're male or female. But if you're looking at it within a business, if you're looking at what does the male upper management make compared to this female who happens to work as a secretary or something, yeah, there's going to be a wage gap. Oh, you mean a secretary or a janitor doesn't make as much as that manager over there? I'm so surprised. You mean the CFO makes less than the CEO? Oh my goodness. And then, by the way, there are plenty of females within those higher positions as well. It's just that many females, they choose to have a kid or something, they don't decide to do that. By the way, when politicians like Elizabethwarren pander and they say, well, that's a big problem too, women are held back for choosing to have kids. Yes, if you're not working, if you're staying home, or if you're working part-time, why should the business deal with paying you the same amount as if you were working? That doesn't make any sense. From a business perspective, actually trying to run a business, it wouldn't make any sense. I can sort of understand why some of these groups are indeed hesitant to have too many women in the boardroom. Because what happens is the ACLU or some group is going to come in and try to sue them because they're like, well, you keep having kids, you're not working half the year. What are we supposed to do at some point with this fucking position? Yes, it could be a problem. By the way, they're talking about, well, women should have like 3 extra days off a month for their period. Okay, what about men? Why shouldn't they have to? I mean, maybe they just feel shitty 3 days a week. I keep hearing like third waivers talk about how men have periods too. They just don't bleed. Okay. Yeah, I can live with that. Let's lower productivity nationwide. Let's just go off a fucking cliff. There is no wage gap. For Elizabethwarren to talk about this is hilarious. Again, you put her up in front of Trump with this bullshit, she's going to get crushed. She's already got so much base. She lied about her ethnicity for 45 years. Don't you think that will be exploited during a debate with Donald Trump of all people? She can't use the racism card. Oh, he would have fun with that. The sexism card? Oh, he'll have fun with that. Be real funny. That's about all. Peace out.